very much. Good evening. I have to confess it's very tough to beat the speech by the wonderful valedictorian as well as President Warra. Wonderful speeches, inspirational and above all strong. But above all, let me first express my thanks to your beatitude, John, President Warraak, the faculty, members of the board of Balamand University, and of course recognize my dear friend, His Excellency Tamam Salam, and recognize the presence of the representatives of the government, President Ron and Prime Minister Nawaf Salam. But above all, graduates, this is your evening. You worked for this, and you struggled, you strived, and you're the pride of your families. Today is more than a celebration of what you've accomplished. It's a moment to pause, take stock, and recognize, as has been said, what the years here have given you. You might not even realize. I know you're busy with party, graduate, take the picture, what happens afterwards. But think of the knowledge you've acquired, the way of thinking, analysis, questioning, not just taking in what you've been told. It's a way of living and a way of working. And you've been given confidence to face the world that rarely offers answers. This is not an easy era to be young. And today marks the end of one journey and the beginning of another, an exciting one, I hope. One filled with change. And nobody ever said that change would be easy. It can be transformational, it can be a challenge, and it can be fraught with difficulty. It is certain that uncertainty is definitely the operative. But you have choice, and the choices that you will make will help you to continue to build. And it's been said before, but I would really like to mark this, also because I'm a parent. You did not reach this alone. Families, friends, caregivers, your grandparents, uncles, aunts, they've been with you, sometimes actively and very often passively in the background. And they deserve our gratitude, and graduates, one big round of applause. You can do it. And this one, of course, applies also to the faculty. And the pride that we all feel on your behalf is something to cherish. And I personally am incredibly happy to be back in Lebanon. Lebanon has given my family, myself, not only insight, but also lasting friendships. Because this is who you are as Lebanese, each and every one of you. I perhaps do not need to tell you, but good things need to be repeated. Lebanon is a country of extraordinary beauty, of taste, cultivation, and, it goes with the package, extraordinary complexity. It's not easy. And I will borrow the words of Pope John Paul II. And you'll know this because it's been said before. Lebanon is more than a country. It is a message. Lubnan hiya risala, of freedom. And an example, and as a Westerner I bow to you, as an example of pluralism for East and West. And that experience, we know, was not born overnight. Yours is a millennial history of travelers, displacement, of continuity, of quest, and of coexistence. You make this work every day. Overlapping cultures, traditions, and creeds. A history not only of spoken, written pluralism, but lived it. And Balamand, I think, is a shining example of this. But that message that Lebanon represents, the people of Lebanon, is tested time and again by crisis, paralysis, and war. And students, I think it would be unfair to not note this very clearly. You are graduating in one of those difficult hours for Lebanon and for the region. But you are graduating, and that's an act of defiance and of resilience, peaceful resilience. Because today is not simply about celebrating what you've achieved, It's also about a reflection, what it means to move forward when the future is uncertain. And I would like to make a few remarks on that. If I take it to myself, after I graduated, my path led me into international affairs. I started, after a short career at Shell International in London, as a junior diplomat. Fast forward 3 decades later, I came back in multiple ministerial roles, amongst others as the boss of the many people I trained with as a foreign minister and deputy prime minister of the Netherlands. Not by design. I did not have some clever career plan. I was armed with interests. I did not have a crafted pathway. No design other than passion, purpose, and an increased willingness to rely on my intuition, your inner core. And what drew me as a student then continues to inspire me today. Questions of justice and rights, of international law, even when international law that should restrain power is failing to do so, and of human dignity coupled with human ingenuity, which should belong equally to every person. Never depend on the passport they carry, or the color of their skin, their gender, or background. I was also drawn to international affairs because it determines very often the fate of smaller and medium-sized countries. Countries like Lebanon, but also a country where I was born. You might not think so, but we are a tiny country, the Netherlands. When the international order works, the system, as it's called, it protects the small alongside the large. And the large, the big ones, have a special duty of care, to shield and to protect. When it fails, it is the smaller, the weak and the frail and the vulnerable that pay the price and bear the consequences. But beyond institutions and geopolitics, I was inspired by something more direct, perhaps more in your face, something quite simple. The needs and aspirations we all share, you and I, across the generations, our common and shared humanity. Whether we are Lebanese, Palestinian, or Dutch, Christian, Muslim, or Jew, born into comfort or hardship, we have far more in common than we ever imagined, and sometimes are allowed to imagine. And I've always believed that common ground is not just an ideal. These are not words. It is something real. You have to realize, you have to live, and you have to help it be created, sustained, and if lost, recreated. Diplomacy nowadays is often mistaken for the art of striking deals. Who hasn't heard of the art of the deal? However, it's actually when a stronger actor wins and a weaker one loses. This is a transaction. But real peace, truthful coexistence, is not a transaction. It's not a one-off. It requires justice, accountability, protection of the vulnerable, peaceful coexistence, and the art of rightful compromise. I obviously do not need to explain further what the flaws may be of the international order today, and my career has brought me to many places afflicted by conflict and suffering, including Syria at the time of the civil war, Lebanon some time back, Palestine, and most recently I served in Gaza. My first visit to Gaza was in 1985, 86. Forgive me, when you get older, the years get a bit fluid. I think the parents will recognize this. But I returned many times afterward, in many incarnations. And when I was back as Under-Secretary General for the UN, nothing prepared me for what I found. You know, the international community has lost it when people, Palestinians in Gaza, say to each other upon saying goodbye, I will see you in heaven. Not I'll see you later, I'll see you tomorrow. I will see you in heaven. And it deeply saddens me to see that Lebanon too has once again had to endure conflict, loss, trauma, and suffering these past years. The lives lost, the hundreds of thousands displaced, communities uprooted. Destruction reaching beyond buildings alone. village squares, roads, olive groves, farmland, and world-renowned shrines and temples came under fire despite their official protected UNESCO status, as whole villages and the history and identity they carry and represent are at the risk of erasure. And yet, in the midst of war, the Lebanese government moved to protect its heritage, a powerful reminder of how deeply the country's history and identity are tied to these places. This is your history, it is your identity. And in all the places where I served, I found the same thing beneath destruction. People holding on, like you have done, against all odds, holding on to our common humanity. That same quiet courage, the same determination to carry on with life as it is or as it should be. In Gaza, I think of a mother who lives in a tent, who gets her son or daughter ready for a makeshift school. She traded whatever she had for a pair of shoes, because you know what every parent does, your child has to look their so-called Sunday best, wherever you are. My son is going to school, she told me, and he will look decent. The school didn't exist, but the importance of education was the message. And I believe that same quiet defiance lives in Lebanon. In students returning to class, our valedictorian student already remembered it, but also in families opening homes, in communities rebuilding routines in places scarred by war. Lebanon is no stranger, sadly, to carrying burdens not of its own making. Each war that spills over its borders, from Syria, from Palestine, places new pressure on communities already stretched thin, on host families, and on a state which is asked to carry significantly more than it was ever built for or prepared for. But Lebanon has shown generosity time and again, and above all, resilience. And we must never lose sight of the human toll and cost of conflict. We must always stand up for all civilians, young and old, and never forget that human dignity can survive even when the international community fails. Laws are ignored, and it's our responsibility to stand up. And this conviction has only grown stronger with experience. I can leave you with 3 lessons before I close. First, choose people, your fellow human beings, over any form of division. We achieve more, infinitely more together than apart. The Lebanese know this from experience. Lebanon is not only the message, I think it's also the promise. And the difference means there is no time to waste on divisions, contrived, constructed, or instrumentalized. Diversity succeeds when empathy and tolerance prevail. Never lose sight of that. It'll take you further than anger or fear ever will. Second, take risks. Don't always follow the safe path. As a Dutch person, Dutch people care very much about their pension. They start planning when they're 25. Of course, it's a wealthy country. Don't worry about the pension plan. Your parents might do that, their grandparents. Live life. Take risks. Do not do things brazenly. It has to be calculated, to be considered. But pursue your dreams. And in a country where so many of the best plans have been interrupted by forces beyond your control, choosing your future, pursuing your interests and passions in itself is an act of determination. And apply for the job that everybody that tells you you will not get, because it's maybe for flan abu flan, or you may not have the connection, or you may be in the wrong village. Who knows? Be ambitious. This is Lebanon. You can make it. And trust your instincts. You know it all deep down, and that is the biggest aspect of courage you need to find in yourselves. And third lesson, no surprises. Here I'm also a mother. Keep going. We live in a world, and I'm not unaware of Instagram and other forms of social media, where others love to suggest success is just an easy road. They planned it and it happened. I've had sleepless nights. I doubt myself. I'm also nervous coming on stage, looking at the numbers here. But progress is built through perseverance. The biggest lessons you learn are mostly from your own failures, the mistakes. And don't look back in the rear mirror, but continue even when the outcome is uncertain. Hard work, as the president said, determination. Youth of Lebanon, you are the artisans and artists of the future. You face uncertainty, but you are the future. It may not feel like it. Our world attracts cynicism. I get that. But hope is the most important ingredient, because you inherit a country of extraordinary talent, extraordinary frustration, you have to admit, a country rich in memory, culture, and possibility. You deserve the stability to thrive, and you have a choice. Do three things. Choose to build rather than to divide, as they say, frapper toujours. Choose to serve rather than stand aside. Be a participant, be an agent of change, not a bystander. And believe that your actions, small or big, from here onward, will make the difference. They will not only shape your future, but that of your country. Choose hope. Hope is courage when others don't possess it or do not look for it. Hope is empathy over apathy. And hope is to act when passivity is the easier solution. Love one another and go for it. And alf mabruk.